So we had another teachable moment happen on stream, and if you didn't see it, I would say it was like one small mistake turned into what I used to see happen on horde keys all the time, where this mistake would basically deplete the key when it shouldn't, and that would be because people start arguing with each other, not willing to give each other the benefit of the doubt, and it turns into a really petty, really stupid conversation that just kind of ends up becoming completely pointless. Now, ultimately, there was one single mistake here, and that was me not paying attention enough to my own survival on the way leading to this moment and realizing that what I was doing was dangerous and ultimately dying to that. There's a lot of misinformation here, a lot of confusion in general. So I just want to give my side of this so people could learn. And I think kind of the main takeaway here is that this is going to happen to you as tanks. If you're playing a tank, people like always interface all the dungeon's problems with somebody else, and the tank is going to be the easiest one to blame 9 times out of 10. You know, there's 3 DPS and they're going to gang up on you. So be ready for this. This kind of thing happens all the time. It's one of the worst things about pugging as a tank because, you know, even if you do make a mistake, even if you're 100% sure that it was your mistake, it's very unlikely that anybody's going to be fine with you making it. They're going to make extra stress for you on top of that. And I think that's kind of what happens here. But I think a lot of this is actually people just don't seem to understand, and they don't have like the historical perspective I have on this. So before we start talking about the actual thing that happens, let me just quickly explain what this ancient captain is. This is a mob that basically makes the prior pack more dangerous. You could actually control undead this mob. Now let me show you what the buff that it does is that is so in question here. This mob's main difficulty comes from this ability here, Commanding Presence. Increases nearby ally damage by 25%. The way I look at it, that's the problem. I don't want to die. I want to make sure that the pack dies quickly, doesn't kill anyone else. So that's the problem. We're going to take that out of the pack prior, but it also reduces area of effect damage by 75%. Now, a lot of people seem to think that like that makes all damage done 75% reduction. I've had that brought up a few times now. I don't see why that would be the case. I mean, if it is the case, then that's a bug or something like that. But I highly doubt these people actually know that for a fact. I'm probably one of the only people on the planet who actually fiddle with this mob like I do. And there's a bit of a backstory to it. So let me walk you through that too. In season 1, we used to try to take this thing upstairs, and it was basically because of how we did the route, long story short. And then in season 2, we did a different route, so it was a little bit different. I used to take this early in the dungeon, and I remember saying like in the beginning of season 2, like let's take this guy first and we'll take him around the rest of the dungeon. You'll have a 2% damage buff. That's what you get when you take him. You do not get the full 25%. And you know, that adds up, right? But then when I started going to the Kulturok wing, I started to realize that it didn't work very well. He'd be trying to basically run from platform to platform, and sometimes he would aggro trash. So he really had multiple keys to span to that kind of mistake with this mob. But the main issue I had was at some point, I don't actually know where the footage is. I tried to look for it, but it did happen on stream for sure. You would bring this guy upstairs, and he would bug out in a variety of different ways. I think the crux of the bug is that you get too far away from him when you jump off the area with the boss that we're about to do, Zav the Unfallen. When you jump off, he has to run all the way back around. And so you could sit there for like 30 seconds and wait for him to catch up, or you could just run all the way yourself and take that off. But it's just not going to happen, right? Like you'd be sitting there trying to explain to your group why they're all upstairs and you're still down here waiting for him. Or you can just let the chips fall where they may. Run down. He's going to stop being your pet. He's going to become, unmind controlled or whatever. Then you're going to go up as well. And again, you could sit there and wait for him to run into you and then mind control him. And I'm sure if you did that, there would be no problem. But this is precious seconds we're losing. So I really don't want to have to do that. That's really suboptimal. Well, then you go upstairs and now he's down there by himself and he's trying to get to you, but he can't. So he has to snap. Now, if you've seen how snapping works in BFA, it's completely different than the way it works in Shadowlands. This is a very sloppy process. It's going to take him probably a good 10 seconds to actually get up there. And when he does, he's going to be evading. Now, if you haven't seen things evade when they pulse combat with something else, it often causes a lot of issues. Not exactly sure how that works, but the crux of the conversation we're trying to have here is that one time brought the captain up, he evaded as the boss, he spawned up there, was evading as the boss spawned, and caused the boss to evade as well and despawn. And I'm 90% sure I made a video on that somewhere on the channel, but I can't seem to find it. But yeah, that ultimately caused us to fail the key. Obviously, if the boss respawns, it takes like 30 plus seconds for that to happen. People might have even used their CDs there. Ever since then, I'm done with this guy. I'm not even thinking about bringing him upstairs, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that. Like they don't have that historical perspective, and I have no quick way of explaining that. So it's putting myself in this position where it kind of looks like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, it's like, it sounds pretty obvious. Like, oh, we can take a 2% damage buff through the last 3 combat instances. We should probably do that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. And I don't think it's worth it, man. Like it could be fine. And maybe I'll give it another try now because, you know, Jix and others were saying that like it doesn't seem to bug out as much. I did just try this recently on a 15 and we, you know, we're over count anyway. So I was like, I might as well keep it. Did the same thing. He released as my pet, took like probably a good 15 seconds to snap up there, and evaded for another good 5 to 10 seconds. And I just don't want to risk that, man. It just doesn't seem worth it. I don't fully understand the issues at their heart, so I'd rather just not take that. And the other 5 tanks can't do this anyway. So I'm always shocked that this actually became an issue. So knowing that, now we know we have to kill the mob. So why don't we kill it with the pack? Well, we already showed you 25% extra damage on that pack on Fortified is going to be very dangerous for the group, but it's also bolstering this week. So one way or the other, we're mind controlling that out so it doesn't bolster and potentially cause even more problems for us. Then at this point, you have basically 2 decisions to make. Well, I guess 3 technically, which is what this group starts arguing about. 1, you could fight it here with the pack that I'm fighting right now and kill it then. 2, you could fight it with the boss and kill it then. Or I suppose 3, you can simply just add another combat instance to the dungeon. That does not sound like a good idea to me in any way. And I honestly don't think these guys who are arguing with this would think that either. If I did that, they'd be then arguing about that instead. There's no way that's a good idea. But here is the entire problem that unfolds. So let's take a look at it. We release the captain as we fight Wreck the Heart. And this is a whole nother discussion, but there's 2 NPCs here. One's Wreck the Heart and the other one's Ardent Nevermore. Ardent Nevermore is very dangerous. He does a lot of damage to the group, and there are ways that you could mitigate that damage and circumvent it, but I knew without Sogadon coming out of season 2 that this guy was going to be very hard again. So I'm doing 21 Fortified for the first time. I'm thinking, hey, we got Wreck. This is the easy one. If I release the captain on Ardent Nevermore, people would probably die because that 25% extra damage would be too much and they wouldn't survive it. But this is a single target guy. He doesn't do any damage to anyone but me. He puts up this unbalancing blow though that makes me take a lot of extra damage because I can't actually parry, dodge, or block during it. And obviously you can't block anyway, but regardless, it's going to make me take a lot more damage. So let's take a look at how this unfolds. I'm getting hit really hard. And ultimately the reason I don't realize how in danger I am right now is because earlier in the dungeon, when I would have noticed it from the previous mini bosses, I was actually involved in there was like some argument in the chat, like some trolling done in the chat. So I had to ban the guy. I wasn't really paying attention to what danger I was in when I was fighting it. But yeah, that's it. I die right there. That's it. Does that nerf the key to a point where we can't upgrade it? No, I don't think so. We have 9.5 minutes left. Nobody else is going to die. There was a lot of really bad deaths to trash, to be honest. Like I could be making a whole video about the play on these guys. We have another Resto Druid barely doing any damage. Like there's a lot of problems with this key. But ultimately, this one moment breaks this key up because we actually finish it, by the way. That's the thing about Horde and Alliance. Like even though these guys are arguing with me and they continued arguing with me even after the key was over, I ultimately actually was able to help them understand why this happened in the first place. And then they settled down and realized it. And they didn't put me on ignore or anything, but they actually stayed. And I still got score from this, even though we were overtime. So I don't know. It's a funny situation. But so then at this point, there starts to be an argument. And the crux of that argument is I should not have released that mob. And, I died. So obviously they're correct. But I've never had that issue before. I've never released that mob on Wreck and actually died. I'm used to being extremely survival oriented, but we have lost a lot of that value in season 3 with the set bonus because we're focusing so much on doing offense now that I have traded a lot of defense. Really, the big issue was that I released it at the start. If we get that on its own when we don't have the as well and everything else, and the shield bash is doing damage, the imbalanced strike, and then the deconstruct all on top of each other, it's like you're asking to die here. And I just didn't really think that, because I thought I would be fine and I didn't recognize how dangerous the mini bosses were prior to that. So ultimately that is 100% on me. Whether or not that death ultimately disbands the key, like I said, if these were just robots who couldn't tilt and get into an argument over nothing, then yeah, we probably still can upgrade this key. Honestly, that's really not that big of a deal. But it also happens on the boss too. So I just want to have a conversation about fighting it on the boss as well and show the mistake there as well. And so now we're into the phase of the problem where we make the opposite mistake now. And this is entirely caused by the arguments. And, I'm starting to get a little frustrated, a little tilted, as they say. The mob's at 56% health here. Obviously, the right time to kill it is just right now while we're finishing Wreck. But these guys are making such a big deal about it. I was like, all right, whatever. Just let them have their way here and we'll kill it with the boss. And then so we make, kind of the same mistake again here. And this is one of those things, like I said, if it wasn't for the argument, if there was no talking, if I just turned chat off, We would have made one mistake and probably still had plenty of time to upgrade the key. But now we're going to kill the boss and we're going to do the exact same thing, which is definitely not what you want to do. I'm thinking like, okay, 7 minutes. We need to make sure we actually can kill this efficiently. And then so this is where things start to go really wrong. Now, the question I have here is why? These guys, this one guy especially starts like messaging me after the key and saying like, how bad of an idea this is. And I get it. So again, same mistake here. Releasing it early is just never a good idea. We should definitely wait. It's just having the extra target is just causing a lot of confusion. But again, you got a healer doing less than 2k and nothing's dying. And so they're like, he's basically blaming me for that. Like this mob is making nothing die. And I get it. The 75% reduction on AoE. I mean, I guess that happens, right? But why would we be AoEing anything? Like that was my point. It's like the only thing that needs to die right now is the banner and it's not dying. So if you're not actually single targeting the banner, then you're kind of lost, I feel like, right? Like, I mean, whatever. So whatever, we'll just get it. We actually get shadow locked by his ability and then have to wait for quaking, but we just get it back and whatever, we'll kill it later. But yeah, so another mistake here made just because I'm getting tilted, I'm getting upset, frustrated by all the conversations happening. And, it's kind of just, I feel like, kind of disrespected. And this is really a tough thing about pugging tank in the tank slot because, this is going to happen. I don't really know what like the right way to deal with it is, honestly. I'm doing something that I believe to be a good idea based on, over a year plus worth of experience, like well over a year, now a year and a half. And I know that this works. Like I've done this already. I've done this key multiple times this season, exact same route. We kill the mob, no problem. And these guys don't know that. They've probably never even seen this done once. So how do you solve that? I don't know. You just got to be a better person. You got to be more emotionally capable, I guess. I was not. I let it get to me. And like I said, if I just don't die, if we don't actually die in this situation here, which I still am shocked by, to be honest, because everything else was so smooth. Like I said, I should have probably noticed how dangerous the first set of the mini bosses was, but I'm just really shocked I died there, and not having a single CD available is regrettable. But if that all just doesn't happen, this never would have been an issue, and that's probably you could take the opposite stance on this for the other keys. You're like, well, you just kind of got lucky. You did maybe something suboptimal in the other keys and you got away with it, and that's kind of the way the game works. You know what I mean? Like if you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how the game works. Everybody's doing suboptimal things yet again. I mean, pretty much every footage we show of this druid, he's doing less than 1k DPS, and I'm trying not to blame anybody else, but like, yeah, there's a lot of things that don't go great in keys. But the problem is when you do one of them, you're going to hear about it as a tank. And that was one of the things that was nice about Alliance for a very long time. And, I make mistakes and people just don't even realize I make mistakes. But yeah, this group managed to figure it out. So anyway, let me know what you think. I think it's a good teaching moment one way or the other. But, to really recap, like this mob, I'm just way too hesitant to bring upstairs. I might try it again now. We'll see what happens. But it's just so risky. I really don't like it at all. It's like so unsettling to see a mob evading while you're trying to fight a boss. And I've also had the problems where he's just kind of running around attacking the healer and stuff too. So I'd really prefer not to do that. And just simply because this week was bolstering, I didn't think there was a lot of options here, and we paid the price for that. So let me know what you guys think. If you have any comments, otherwise we'll see you guys in the next one.